Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jessica Klein, and I'm very honored to be able to welcome USAID Administrator Shah and the many innovators, investors, and civil society representatives who are here today. One of the 4 themes of the Global Impact Economy Forum is from aid to investment, looking at ways of taking government and private sector resources and converting them to investments that yield financial, social, and environmental returns. And as a student here at Georgetown's Business School, and also a current USAID employee, it's particularly exciting to see Dr. Shah leading USAID to the forefront of new synergies between the public and the private sector, both working together to solve some of the world's worst problems, not just with aid, but with investment. And since being sworn in as the USAID administrator, Dr. Shah has been leading the United States effort to help people overseas struggling for a better life. The urgency of this mission is apparent in many different situations, one of which is when the devastating Haiti earthquake struck only 12 days after his confirmation, and he began leading the $3.1 billion US response to that crisis. And while USAID and the US government led some significant rescue, relief, and rebuilding efforts, it was often side by side and in close coordination with the private sector. I personally know that collaborative and innovative tools developed by the private sector, like crowdsourced mapping and mobile messaging, were critical to our government's effort. And in addition to leading US response to crises around the world, Dr. Shah has also been advancing significant business process reforms at USAID, rejuvenating the role of science and technology in development, and developing a new food security initiative, among many other things. So these are just some of the very exciting opportunities for partnership with USAID to move from aid to investment. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Administrator Raj Shah.
Thank you, Jessica. That's very nice. Thank you. Hello, good afternoon. Thank you, Jessica. It's amazing that Jessica continues to work with us at Aiden State and somehow also manages to be here in school getting her degree. So I don't know how you managed to do all of that, but thank you very much. And I want to thank Chris Balderston for putting this together, and of course Secretary Clinton for her leadership in this area and making this such a big priority, not just for aid, but for the State Department. And that's great to see. And a special thank you to Georgetown students, faculty, staff, and others who've been supportive of this. As I look around this room, I see a lot of familiar faces and a lot of people that know this sector and this space very, very well. So I'd like to start with just a brief introductory example. And it's one of many that I think you all have been talking about these last few days. But it's the story of 2 entrepreneurs who in 2007 in India decided to tackle the problem of rolling blackouts, coal shortages, and poor electrical distribution. And as they worked, and especially in rural communities, saw the low level of rural electrification, they were searching for new answers that could tackle this problem and saw that rice millers, often women who were doing what these women are doing in this photograph, were separating rice from rice husks, and the husks were being wasted. Turning this rice bio-waste into fuel was a widely understood concept, but one that was also dismissed because it had been tried so many times, and there were so many challenges, such as the high degree of tar that's created as a byproduct. But with some technological modifications, these entrepreneurs, childhood friends who had grown up in one of India's poorest states, Bihar, where actually my wife's family is from, designed an engine that could produce clean gas while still generating enough energy to power a rural village. With their own savings and a little bit of help from the government, they built the engine, founded a company called Husk Power Systems, and established 2 small power plants to show that their invention could work. Today, they've received support from many of you in this room, including Acumen and Shell and others, and are operating in more than 25,000 villages throughout rural India, reaching millions of people with energy. Even more impressive, each of the plants in each of these villages has broken even within 6 months of gearing up, and the company is now planning on taking its business model to other countries in Africa and Southeast Asia. Husk Power is a great example of how investors, companies, and entrepreneurs can come together to deliver a profitable solution to one of the most intractable problems in development, the fact that billions of people still live in the dark. But the truth is, this success story, and I think this has been the subject of what so much of the discussion has been about, is also too often an outlier. Many of the potential entrepreneurs that can develop these kinds of breakthroughs are not effectively accessing and realizing their full potential. Entrepreneurs face challenges in almost every realm, many of which you've discussed. Today, 3/4 of the world's poor don't have access to a bank account, limited access to capital. And when they do have access, the collateral requirements or other nuances that govern their ability to seek resources essentially ensures that they're not able to take risks and embark upon their dreams. So whether we're talking about impact investments, private sector partnerships, traditional grant-making mechanisms that provide resources to these types of problem solvers, we know that the sum total of what we're all doing together is simply not enough. Despite the microcredit revolution, which we're excited about, and the vast potential of private sector engagement, which we see increasing year on year, so that today investment flows to developing countries outpace foreign aid 5-to-1. Private investment and financing are just not reaching enough early stage models and enough entrepreneurs that have an idea to test and try. Now, I'm assuming you've spent a lot of the last few days discussing all of the different reasons why that's the case, and hopefully coming up with some great ideas for how we might work together to overcome that and create a more dynamic, more entrepreneurial business environment in resource-poor settings around the world. We'd like to offer a few examples that we think are leading the way in terms of the transformation of how U.S. aid and other significant development agencies and programs can follow your lead and can back up your ideas with our own in order to create more progress. In one example, we've helped smallholder chickpea farmers in Ethiopia work to improve their output, sell the product of their output, as you see in the photograph here, to Pepsi, which can then produce both a paste, a chickpea-based paste that is a high nutrition product that can be used in food aid and feeding programs, and can produce a commercial hummus product that is sold in private sector markets and supermarkets in the region. Those types of programs that materialize as the result of our engagement help us have the confidence that we can reach 30,000 women farmers and help move them out of poverty over time through this type of a partnership. In another example, in northern Kenya and certain parts of Ethiopia, we've been working with Swiss Re, an industry leader in risk management solutions. This is a photograph of farmers and dairy pastoral-based families in northern Kenya that through the tremendous drought last summer and last fall, were actually able to access rainfall-indexed weather insurance products and payments, and allowed to therefore stay in their community, protect their livelihoods, protect their livestock, and survive through what was a very, very damaging and tremendous drought, the worst in 6 decades, and one that displaced millions and millions of their neighbors. In this next partnership, Coca-Cola is working to make sure that more than 300,000 people across 8 African countries gain access to sustainable and clean sources of water, while at the same time building bottling facilities in locations much closer to its own customers, thereby improving both the sustainability of its business and their own bottom line. In this case, USAID and other partners can help to extend the reach of their business platform so that they can touch more communities and bring clean drinking water to more remote environments. Now, I'm sure you've had speaker after speaker make the point that profitability is critical to effectively engage private sector ingenuity and partnership in tackling these issues. And I would argue that we fully agree with that basic argument. But we take it a little bit further, because I think we realize that in order to have a mindset that is open to these kinds of ideas and innovations, we have to sort of overcome some of the challenges of the past. We have to overcome the examples that maybe made us unlikely to seek partnership across these sectors, and overcome some of the experiences that we might have had that substantiate the risks that are entailed when we put our trust in private sector partnerships. But I'm pleased to say that USAID and I think a number of our partners are making tremendous progress against that challenge. I know that Chris Lee, the head of the Strategic Transactions Group that we set up in the Development Credit Authority program, was here speaking with you earlier during the conference. They're looking at how we can do really innovative models of finance and engage with companies that have supply chain issues and could reach poor communities in country after country, and how we can continue to unlock more local finance, because local bank institutions have tended to be so relatively unadventurous in terms of seeking out and supporting many of these types of models. In this next photo, you'll see the outcome of one of our partnerships with JP Morgan Chase and the Development Credit Authority. Working together, along with many of you as impact investors, we were collectively able to capitalize a $25 million private investment fund in sub-Saharan Africa, specifically to work in agriculture and food security in East Africa. Now, that may not seem like much, but that'll actually support somewhere around 30 to 40 businesses in that environment, creating new private sector seed companies that will help improve yields and harvests in those areas, supporting small agribusinesses that can tackle the challenge of how much post-harvest loss occurs in community after community. And it's precisely those types of partnerships that we think will ultimately help transform the economies in which we're working. But we found that it's not enough to just have these types of tools and mechanisms. We also need our core staff around the world to think of themselves as really responsible for sourcing new deals, for being out and about identifying great local partners that we can get to know and then get to partner with. To accelerate that effort, we've really done two things that I'm very enthusiastic about, but I know will take time to fully materialize. First, we've fielded our first ever field investment officers, so that in USAID missions in places like Cairo, Lima, Bangkok, and Nairobi, we actually have people out there looking for entrepreneurs and private sector partners, constructing the deal flow that I'm certain you discussed as one of the barriers to seeing more success in this space. We've created the Development Innovation Venture Fund, and we were thrilled that Secretary Clinton was able to announce the almost $45 million partnership between USAID and the Skoll Foundation that will lead to so many different innovations. Innovations like a partnership between Colorado State University researchers and Hawassa University in Ethiopia that can test alternatively produced local fertilizers. Or partnerships like some of the new ones we have with, and I think in this case, the research lab at Harvard that is seeking to create a credit scoring methodology in developing countries and in resource-poor settings using new psychometric tests. And this one, I'm very curious how this will turn out. But their early data show that their relatively comprehensive psychometric testing evaluates intelligence, business acumen, honesty, a range of psychological characteristics, but can accurately predict both risk and future earnings potential, and may be an alternative to building a global system of credit ratings for places where that's not going to be possible. It's those types of innovations that we think can actually unlock systemically much more resource flow and private activity for the communities that so many of us are committed to reaching, and for the entrepreneurs whose potential we seek to encourage over time. And finally, I would say there's one more fundamental effort that we're making that I think you and all of us should insist upon with all of our partners in this space of development activity. And that is making sure we are dead serious about building real local institutions. Many of you, and I've had a chance to work with so many of the different organizations that I see represented in the room today, the core excellence of what you bring is your willingness to be out and about, your willingness to study deeply the local partners with whom you're working, your willingness to join their boards or help them build boards, and to help them tackle some of the actual mechanics of financial management, human resource systems development, things that aren't as sexy or as interesting sometimes to talk about at conferences. And you need to keep doing that. And you need to keep talking about it, make it very visible. Because the truth is, you operate next to a $130 billion a year official development enterprise. Partners like USAID and the World Bank and others that make that community up. And we are rapidly changing to follow your lead. We have instituted at USAID a very aggressive set of reforms called USAID Forward to basically shift away from thinking of capacity development as something we do through consultants and international partners and people who fly in and hold meetings in hotel ballrooms, and recognize a fundamental truism in the private sector that needs to also apply to our work in development, and that is that capacity follows capital. Where we invest that capital is precisely where we'll build that capacity. And so today we're investing that capital in local entrepreneurs all around the world. We're investing that capital directly in institutions like the Ministry of Public Health in Afghanistan, which 6, 7, 8 years ago people didn't think would emerge as a strong entity. Today it not only has emerged as a strong entity, but has had the single largest reduction in maternal mortality anywhere in the world over the last decade, has been the result of our shared investment in that institution and what it has done with those resources in a very transparent and responsible way. And I could go through example after example after example. And I would just say that those of you in this room that have been fighting for this mindset shift, that we don't do things to the people and places where we work, we need to work with them, invest directly in their own capabilities, and allow their institutions to flourish, you're on the right track. You need to keep it up, and you need to insist that USAID and every other official agency and enterprise in this business learn from and follow those basic best practices. So with that, I thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. I'm really excited about the direction you're taking, and I'm excited about the direction we, as official institutions, are taking to follow your lead and partner with you, and recognize there's a lot to do in this space. So I'm glad you're all here and still focused, and wish you the very best of luck. Thank you.